The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with tension. Towering figures of various alien species sat in grand, elevated seats, their bioluminescent emblems flickering with unreadable expressions. The Supreme Arbiter, a sleek feathered avian, ruffled his plumage as he gazed down at the lone human standing before them. A dozen languages whispered through the chamber, but the tone was universal. Mockery, disbelief, condescension. So this is what humanity sends? The Arbiter's voice was smooth, almost amused. A single diplomat? John Kessler, dressed impeccably in a black suit, simply adjusted his cuffs. His eyes, cold and unreadable, swept across the chamber, taking in every detail. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and unwelcome. None of it mattered. The Arbiter's beak clicked. Humanity is an anomaly, primitive, yet irritatingly persistent. You push for negotiations, yet lack leverage. He leaned forward. Do you know why you were summoned, Kessler? Kessler's voice was even. A diplomatic resolution. Laughter rippled through the chamber. A hulking reptilian general, scales scarred from centuries of battle, let out a low rumble. No, you are here to submit. The Council will dictate humanity's role in the galaxy, and you will comply. Kessler's expression didn't change. Interesting interpretation of diplomacy. The Arbiter's eyes gleamed. You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. You will provide intelligence on human fleet movements, technology, and defenses. Refusal will result in consequences. Kessler exhaled slowly. Consequences. A heavy clang echoed through the chamber as armored enforcers stepped forward, plasma rifles humming to life. The Arbiter's voice was almost gentle. You are now in the custody of the Galactic Council. No reaction, no resistance, just an eerie calm. Escort him to the holding cells, the Arbiter ordered. Two enforcers stepped forward, locking reinforced restraints onto Kessler's wrists. Still nothing. No fear. No protest. As he was led away, he turned slightly, his voice carrying through the chamber. You have no idea what you've just done. The security wing of the Council Station was built to contain the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Thick reinforced walls, automated turrets, gravity locks, impenetrable. Inside, Kessler sat in a stark, featureless cell. He observed his surroundings with clinical detachment. Two guards stood outside, shifting uneasily despite the absurdity of it. A single unarmed human? Hardly a threat. Minutes passed. Then an alert. Static crackled in their earpieces. The station's AI flickered. The guards stiffened. One tapped his wrist console. Command, we have a... The lights flickered. Then silence. The first guard turned. His partner was gone. Just gone. A sudden, suffocating pressure filled the corridor. A shape moved. Then nothing. Supreme Arbiter's chamber. A junior officer stumbled forward, his skin pale. Sir, we lost contact with the security wing. The Arbiter barely looked up. Then re-establish it. We can't. The room fell silent. A battle-scarred warlord stirred. What do you mean you can't? No visuals. No comms. Just... The officer swallowed. Gone. The warlord's claws tightened. Something old stirred in his memory. Something he hadn't dared speak of in years. The Arbiter scoffed. One human diplomat and your forces crumble? Send the elites. End this. The officer hesitated. The warlord exhaled sharply. We should have checked his file. A few taps on the holoconsole. Redacted files. Military history classified. But one word wasn't. Codename, Baba Yaga. The room chilled. The warlord stood slowly. Call back your men. The Arbiter frowned. Excuse me? You don't understand. This isn't a man. The warlord's voice was hoarse. This is something else. The holoscreen flickered. A brief, blurry image of something moving in the dark. A shadow. Then static. The Arbiter clenched his jaw. Deploy every unit. Terminate him. The warlord shook his head. No. You run. The Arbiter scoffed. From one man. The warlord's hands trembled. Not a man. A legend. A squad of elite enforcers moved through the corridors, weapons at the ready. They'd fought wars, put down insurgencies. This was nothing. Then they heard it. A soundless whisper. A shadow that shouldn't exist. A single gunshot. The lead enforcer dropped, a hole between his eyes. Panic surged through the squad. Comms crackled. "He's here." Screams. One by one they fell. The last survivor gasped into his comm. "It's not a diplomat. It's a damn executioner." In the council chamber, the arbiter's feathers flared. Status. Dead silence. Then the lights flickered. A single, grainy feed came back online. Kessler. Walking. Alone. Unarmed. Calm. Moving towards them. The security station was in chaos. Officers barked orders into dead comms. Their voices laced with something unfamiliar, fear. Protocol dictated swift elimination of intruders, yet the feeds only showed bodies. No alarms triggered. No signs of struggle. Just empty corridors littered with fallen guards. A ranking officer activated the intercom. "All units, converge on detention block C. Lethal force authorized." The response was static. He swallowed hard. "Repeat. All units report." Still nothing. Then a faint whisper. A single word. "Too late." The feed cut to black. Kessler moved through the dimly lit corridors, his pace unhurried. His suit, once pristine, was now marked with smears of blood. Not his. A confiscated plasma sidearm rested in his hand, held loosely, almost casually. Ahead, a squad of enforcers set up a defensive line, their armored bodies rigid with tension. They had fortified the corridor, automatic turrets primed, overlapping fields of fire ready. A textbook kill zone. Kessler stepped forward. The commander shouted, "Halt! Surrender now!" And a single shot. The commander crumpled, a smoking hole in his visor. The squad fired. Kessler was already moving. A blur of calculated efficiency. He weaved through the chaos, their own weapons turned against them. Plasma bolts scorched the walls, missing by inches, but he never faltered. The moment stretched, movements precise, mechanical, unstoppable. By the time the last enforcer fell, the battle had lasted less than 5 seconds. A warning should have been sent, a distress call, but no one had time to scream. The Galactic Council chamber was in uproar. The Supreme Arbiter's composure was cracking, his talons tapping erratically on the console. "Impossible," he muttered. "One human cannot." A trembling aide interrupted. "Sir, we ran his codename through our war archives." The holoscreen flickered. Historical records, fragmented reports, unconfirmed, dismissed as myth. Codename, Baba Yaga. The Arbiter scowled. A meaningless title. The warlord clenched his fists. "No, it means something." The chamber quieted as he spoke. His voice carried the weight of wars long past, of whispered legends that refused to die. There was an outpost, years ago, a fleet sent to claim a human colony. Minimal resistance expected. His jaw tightened. "We lost contact within the hour. No survivors. No wreckage. Just silence." The holoscreen shifted. Satellite footage of a battlefield. Twisted metal. Shadowed figures moving in the smoke. And then nothing. "No bodies were found," the warlord continued. "No prisoners. Just the name, carved into the hull of our warship." The Arbiter's feathers bristled. "Coincidence?" The warlord stared at him. "We called it that too, until it happened again. And again." A shudder passed through the chamber. The myths had always seemed exaggerated. Until now. The warlord exhaled. "We thought it was propaganda. A ghost story humans told to scare their enemies." The aide's voice was barely a whisper. "What if it wasn't?" The mercenary commandos were the best money could buy. Augmented, battle-hardened, ruthless. They had ended planetary insurrections, assassinated kings, toppled governments. Their leader watched the carnage on his visor feed, his jaw tight. He had seen massacres before, but this was something else. "Move in," he ordered. Lock every corridor. He's one man. No response. He gritted his teeth. Say again. A sharp breath. Then static. He swore under his breath. His second-in-command turned. What are we dealing with? The leader's mouth felt dry. Something that fights like a man. A pause. Then a quiet correction. No, something worse. The Arbiter activated the station's AI defense grid. A last resort. The walls hummed as sentry turrets deployed, motion scanners sweeping every corridor. Impossible to escape now. An alert pinged. The system detected movement. Lock on target, the Arbiter ordered. The AI hesitated. Then, a chilling response. Error. No target detected. The Arbiter's feathers flared. What? The warlord's voice was grim. He's already inside. A warning klaxon blared. Not a security breach. Not an external threat. Proximity alert. Inside the chamber. The council turned as the massive doors slid open. Kessler stepped through, untouched, unhurried. His suit still immaculate save for the bloodstains. A stolen plasma rifle rested at his side. Barrel still smoking. Silence fell. He didn't speak. He didn't need to, because they already knew. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a reckoning. The chamber was deathly silent. Dozens of alien dignitaries, warlords, and strategists sat frozen in their seats, their collective power meaningless against the man standing before them. The doors behind Kessler sealed shut with a heavy thud, the security protocols activating too late to matter. Every council member had heard of assassinations, political purges, and battlefield executions. But this was different. This was methodical, precise, a display of control so absolute that no one dared move. The Supreme Arbiter's talons curled against the console. His voice, though steady, carried an edge of something unfamiliar, uncertainty. You cannot possibly believe you can walk out of here alive. Kessler tilted his head slightly, considering the words. His silence spoke louder than threats. The warlord seated closest to him shifted uncomfortably, his battle-scarred exoskeleton creaking. He had fought countless wars, crushed rebellions with brutal efficiency. And yet, in this moment, instinct screamed at him. A predator had entered the den. You misunderstand, Kessler finally said, voice calm, almost conversational. Walking out of here was never in question. The Arbiter's feathers flared, sensing the implied certainty. He gestured subtly, a signal only his elite guards would recognize. Two armored enforcers moved at inhuman speed, their enhanced reflexes making them faster than any organic soldier. They never reached him. A single shot rang out. One dropped instantly, the round piercing the gap between helmet and collar. The second barely had time to react before Kessler's knife found the exposed joint in his armor. A flick of his wrist sending the blade deep into the vital artery. He didn't spare them a glance as they fell. A counselor gasped. Another recoiled in horror. The warlord's mandibles tightened, and for the first time in his long career, he felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Primal, undeniable fear. The Arbiter's expression darkened. Enough! He pressed a hidden command beneath his console. A faint hum filled the air as reinforced kinetic barriers activated around the chamber, shielding the council behind layers of impenetrable energy. Kessler exhaled slowly, not in frustration, not in concern, just patience. The Arbiter straightened, regaining some of his composure. You are contained. There is nowhere left to run. A quiet moment passed. Then Kessler took a step forward. The warlord stiffened. That shield is reinforced against orbital bombardment. His voice was firm, but beneath it, a question lingered. Why is he still moving? Kessler took another step. The Arbiter's confidence flickered. It can withstand planetary sieges. It is unbreakable. Kessler stopped just before the barrier. He looked up, meeting the Arbiter's gaze. Then he raised a single hand and placed it against the energy field. The room watched, breath held, as nothing happened. The shield held. Perfect defense. Impenetrable. And then, a faint distortion, barely visible at first. A ripple where Kessler's palm touched the field, spreading outward in slow, deliberate waves. The Arbiter's eyes widened. Impossible! The shield pulsed, warped. A fracture spread through the energy like cracks in glass. One counselor stumbled backward. That shouldn't be happening. The warlord whispered a single word. Tech disruption. The Arbiter snapped his gaze to him. Explain. The warlord's voice was grave. It's not brute force. It's not hacking. He's destabilizing it at the molecular level. The shield wavered. The air shimmered. And then it collapsed. The silence was deafening. Kessler stepped through. Panic erupted. Counselors scrambled back. Guards surged forward. Plasma weapons hummed as they prepared to fire. Kessler moved before they could react. One shot. One kill. Another. Then another. A guard lunged, but Kessler sidestepped, catching the rifle mid-swing, redirecting the momentum into a brutal counterstrike that shattered the alien's skull against the console. He pivoted, pulling a fallen weapon into his grip, firing twice more before the next wave could reach him. The warlord roared, leaping into the fray. A veteran of countless battles, his claws could rip through reinforced steel, his armor capable of withstanding heavy ordnance. None of it mattered. Kessler's movements were too fast, too efficient. The warlord lashed out, but Kessler was already inside his guard. One precise strike to the throat sending the massive warrior staggering. Before he could recover, a round was pressed against his temple. A pause. A choice. Kessler lowered the weapon. The warlord fell to his knees, staring up at him. He didn't need words to understand. Mercy was given, not owed. The Arbiter had backed against the farthest wall, trembling. His guards were dead. The council chamber was a slaughterhouse. Kessler turned to him. The Arbiter's breath was ragged. Why you can't kill me? Humanity is already outnumbered in this war. Kessler's eyes remained unreadable. You think this is war? The Arbiter hesitated. Kessler stepped closer. If this were war, he said quietly, you wouldn't be here to argue. A sharp inhale. A dawning realization. This wasn't an invasion. It was a warning. The Arbiter's hands trembled against the console. His breath came in short, sharp gasps as his mind raced for a solution. An escape, a bargain, anything. But the truth loomed before him, undeniable and absolute. Kessler wasn't here to negotiate. The council chamber, once the heart of galactic diplomacy, was a graveyard. Bodies slumped over ornate desks, blood pooling across polished floors. The few survivors pressed themselves against the walls, hoping, praying, that stillness might grant them invisibility. The Arbiter forced his voice to remain steady. If you kill me, the council will retaliate. The fleets will. Kessler's gaze didn't waver. The Arbiter's throat tightened. You can't fight the entire galaxy. Kessler took a slow step forward. The Arbiter's voice cracked. The Human Federation is barely holding its borders as it is. One diplomat won't change. A single word stopped him cold. I'm not a diplomat. The room shrank around the Arbiter. He had known, of course. Had known the moment the alarms failed. The security teams went silent. The chamber doors had sealed after the intruder entered. But hearing it spoken aloud made it real. Kessler wasn't an envoy of peace. He was a message. The Arbiter's vision blurred for a moment. Desperation clawed at him. What do you want? Kessler didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached into his blood-stained jacket, withdrawing a small, palm-sized device. With a flick of his wrist, he activated it, tossing it onto the central table. A hologram flared to life. The surviving counselors gasped. A single planet hung in the projection, rotating slowly. Cities spread across its surface, vast and shining, the unmistakable mark of civilization. Earth. The Arbiter's mind reeled. This is your homeworld. Kessler nodded. The Arbiter struggled for composure. Why show us this? Kessler's voice remained even. Because I want you to understand. The warlord, still kneeling in silent defeat, finally found his voice. Understand what? Kessler's eyes met his. That we let you live. The weight of those words settled over the chamber like a burial shroud. The arbiter's mouth went dry. "What are you saying?" Kessler's expression remained unreadable. "Humanity doesn't need war to win." He gestured toward the display. "You assumed we were weak because we held back. That we feared you because we didn't retaliate in kind." A ripple of unease passed through the survivors. Kessler continued, "Your fleets outnumber ours. Your armies are larger. Your technology older. You assumed that meant you were superior." The arbiter clung to the last threads of defiance. "We are superior." Kessler didn't blink. "Then why are you still breathing?" The arbiter had no answer. Kessler turned back to the hologram, tapping a command. The projection zoomed outward, showing Earth's place among the stars. Then it expanded again, and again. The display shifted, highlighting human colonies, outposts, hidden installations scattered across uncharted space. Each one marked, labeled in a language the council had dismissed as primitive. A counselor whispered in horror, "We never detected these." Kessler let the realization sink in. "You thought you had the advantage. Thought you knew where our borders ended. Thought you could strike, dictate the terms of war." He turned back to them. "You never even saw the battlefield." The arbiter grasped the edge of the console as his world unraveled. Kessler stepped forward one last time, stopping just inches from him. "Your fleets can attack. Your armies can march. Your warlords can issue commands." He let the words settle before delivering the final blow. "But your empire ends the moment we decide it does." The warlord bowed his head. He understood. The council understood. And the arbiter at last understood too. This hadn't been an assassination. It had been a lesson. And the galaxy had just learned who truly controlled the dark.